Hello there. All right, we are testing for the loop on the live, and it says I'm streaming live. Waiting to see if I'm actually live on my iPad over here. Currently, not so much. Sort of a new occurrence. We have a countdown clock here saying I'll go live soon, and there we are. Hello, everybody. Sorry for that. We are live on my second report. I'm Dr. Nick Alenov, and welcome to the Alenov Daily Health Report. My first health report was yesterday, got cut a bit short because I was off to work. And so the setup took a little longer than I thought. I'm really excited to do today's report because I'm going to add on to everything we were talking about yesterday, which includes information about staying well this winter. And on everyone's mind is what to do if you may have cold or flu-like symptoms, as there seems to be a new virus of such wandering about. And I live in the upper Midwest right now. About 70 to 80% of the people I know have already reported coming down with cold and flu-like symptoms in the past 2 months. So it seems as though we're all being exposed one way or another, and we are dealing with this. I have yet to talk to anybody who's had extreme issues with it. But it's concerning, right? Because this is something that we have not been exposed to before. And so we're all having to deal with it. Our immune systems are learning for the first time. So whereas many adults, like most adults that I know who live a decent, healthy lifestyle, essentially don't get many colds or flus. They might go 3, 4, 5 winters without a single one, like myself. And yet it seems like everyone's being exposed to this and expressing some symptoms. And so, that's unique, right? It's something we haven't had to deal with, as something new in the viral community for a long time. And so there's a lot of questions, and there should be. So I'm going to go over and sort of throw out a show today, which is going to, a report. Sorry, I'm calling this the report, not the show. No dancing will occur in this report. So, but I'm going to put out a report today that is going to really go to people who have been asking me this over and over again the last 2 months, which is, what should I do to maybe prevent having a strong problem this winter with this immune issue? And if I just got it, what should I do? And also, I'm talking to a lot of people who have had it and then are having some lingering issues. In other words, they have chronic issues since having the acute cold and flu-like symptoms. And so I want to address that as well. Since people watching this, there may be people watching this eventually who do not know me. I got a shout out from some friends of mine yesterday after seeing my first report saying, Nick, you might want to tell people maybe when you were born, your age, because sadly, you do look like a young man, maybe in his 20s. And while that's great for a lot of professions, being a doctor might be the one profession where it actually is great to look older than your age, because we tend to think of wisdom as going with age. So yeah, I know, especially when there's just a little box of me talking there. So for what it's worth, my name is Dr. Nikolai Alenov. I was born in the Twin Cities area in 1976. So you do the math. I'm in my early 40s and have been in practice, practicing functional medicine, other natural health care since 2002. Now, moving on, maybe that will help the situation. You're wondering, who is this person? So moving along for today's report, I always want to start out by giving you an overview of really what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to share the screen here. Here we go. And so what is this? Here we have the daily health report for today. and it's going to be packed full. And also, I've got all the time in the world. I will try to keep this in that 1 hour range. Every time I say a certain timeline, though, doesn't really seem to hold true. But like I said, this is going to be an extraordinary report. I want to give you a lot of information today to answer a lot of the questions people are having about immunity and the most important things to do at this moment. Now, that's different than just general immune advice. Like, what should I do in general to stay well versus what should I do in this cold and flu season if I feel A, I'm getting sick, B, people around me are getting sick. I would prefer not to get as sick as they are. What should I do if I've gotten this illness and now I'm recovering and I might have chronic symptoms? So here we go. So, what to do if you have cold flu-like symptoms this winter, sort of the title of this report. I already went through a little bit about me, where I grew up, my age, my credentials. We're going to review the essential 5, and they get into viral symptoms and the difference. This is important, the difference between perceived health and cellular health, because a lot of people are just wondering, why am I getting this when I'm a healthy person otherwise? And then, why are people losing their taste and smell? What are some issues with these chronic lingering symptoms that we're seeing? So I'm hearing reports of everything from lingering fatigue to lingering headaches. Another thing, because this is a respiratory virus, a lot of people are having possibly lingering issues with respiratory symptoms, whether that be a cough or a dryness, or some people are feeling a tension or tightness in their throat around their vocal cords, almost feels like they're being squeezed. That's possibly another chronic symptom that or sign that your body has been exposed to a respiratory virus of some type and that it's lingering. Your immune system hasn't fought that off quite yet. So we're going to go into the very important aspects of nutrition and especially supplements that can help with this. So yesterday, if you haven't seen it, go ahead and watch my first report from yesterday where we went into zinc. We're going to go back in to talk about more about zinc and then also vitamin D, which is very important for the acute issue, and then also how to think about vitamin D in the long term. And then we're going to talk about a very important product and formula that I sell, that my company sells, called Cell Energy Complete, and how the fulvic acid in that is essential for recovery of mineral deficiencies. Then we're going to go at the end there. Like I said, most of my shows, we're going to end with a informational piece about stress and fear. And so we're going to go through that outline again of the ego mind, what that means, how that creates stress and fear in us, which a lot of us are dealing with in this very interesting last 11 months of our lives on planet Earth. And we're going to end, because again, I've got more time. We are going to end with a stress release therapy guided stress release, which is something you can do right now in your house once I show you how you can do this, and it's very useful. All right, so we're done with that. Next up, or the first thing on our list, is the essential 5. Okay, so let's share this back. So just as a recap from yesterday, we're going to talk about go. We're going to talk about Zoom. Very nice. There we go. The essential 5, what that actually means. So these are the topics that we must think about if we're thinking about health. The essential 5 are mind, movement, food, sleep, and nutrition. And so we're going to really jump straight to nutrition, how that is being affected, and how our mineral status and our zinc status is being affected, because it's so important in how we fight viral illnesses. And so we're going to review from yesterday zinc. And when you were talking about these products, I'm going to share my screen now. And so you know where to find these products. Now, of course, you can find zinc just about anywhere, but I'm going to be talking about specific products that I personally get through a store called Welevate. So I'm going to share screen again online. Here we go. All right. And so here we have it. This is my website, dralenov.com, or even alenov.com will work. If you're listening, that's spelled A-L-E-N-O-V. You can scroll down to the nutrition and product store, hit that button. This will bring you to an area where I just like to cleanly list out anything that I'm recommending. My patients come here, my people who are clients who are going through my health reset program come here, because it's sort of an all-in-one area to see all of the products that I recommend, whether these be things I sell directly or not. So right now we're discussing Welevate. So if you click here, Welevate orders, that will bring you, if you're new to Welevate, it's a dispensary, it's online, it's always linked to a doctor's account. If you don't have a doctor with a Welevate account, you can click here, sign up under my account. That will bring you to here. All right, so here I am actually signed in as a patient called Kolya, K-O-L-Y-A. If you see that name pop up here, that's my nickname. And so here are, okay, here's what that begins to look like right here. And so Welevate is a dispensary, has over 350 different nutritional product brands available. They are getting these products directly from the manufacturer, so you know you're getting the right thing, quality, not counterfeit, and also the newest products, right? Because they're moving things regularly through this dispensary to all over the country. So hundreds of thousands of products. Now, yesterday we talked about, I did a little shopping here. So here I am in the cart. I'm going to view this cart. And so yesterday we were talking about these zinc products. And this one right here in particular, is the one we're going to discuss, is a very nice product. There we go. That'll help out more. In that it's a liquid ionized zinc for $9.35 after my discount that I give everyone. You can have a bottle of liquid zinc sulfate. All right. And so zinc is one of the primary things that people are talking about, of course, not just for this year or this current respiratory viral issue going around, but these are things that for decades people have said. The names you're going to hear when you're talking about natural nutritional products that are very important for viral issues, you're going to hear zinc, of course, you're going to hear vitamin D. And of course, if you're living in a northern climate, you're going to have to take vitamin D, because we have zero vitamin D being made through our skin, the natural method, for about 6 to 8 months of the year. Yeah, when you live up here in the northern latitude. So that just isn't going to cut it. You're going to have to take vitamin D in order to get through the winter. And that's not something you can just take and just guess at. We're going to talk about that, as how to actually measure that. You're going to have to get a blood test to have that measured. So zinc, vitamin D, and then vitamin C. So those are the three things we're going to talk about today. And if you're not going back to the last report, there's a quick, I'm going to drop that really quick and then show you a screen share here that I made yesterday, which is just a comparison of zinc products. So again, you can get zinc anywhere. If you can find any important mineral that you're taking, if you can get it in the ionized form, that's the best way to take high dosages of it. And when you're needing to replenish your zinc levels, you're going to have to take quite a bit of that, obviously. So ionized zinc is great. So here's the ionized zinc product that we discussed from yesterday. And I just want to recap that it's $9.35 for a bottle of this. There's 48 servings. There's 50 milligrams of zinc sulfate per serving. That's 2,400 milligrams of zinc sulfate. You can find other products out there like this one that was called Zinc Drink. Zinc Drink is $26.96. 28 servings of only 15 milligrams. This is the exact same thing. So you're now paying $26 for 420 milligrams versus 2,400 milligrams for $935. So do the math. That means if you're using this product, you'd have to buy $154 of this product, this zinc drink, in order to get the same amount of zinc you're getting for $9.35. So anyhow, I hate to over focus on any one product. The reason why I offer a large array of distributors and vendors and products to my patients and people who listen to me and do my health reset programs is because you never know when a product's going to go out of stock, when it's going to be back ordered, when you're not going to be able to find it. So I hate to focus on one product, but if you go to Elevate and you can get this zinc product, it's fantastic right now. It is in stock as of right now. And so again, that is right here. It's called Ionized Zinc, and the manufacturer right here is called, their name is Trace Minerals. So the code, there we go, vendor item code is IOZ01, if that helps. Anyhow, $9.35. Now, so when we're taking zinc, this is one thing that I've told many of my friends to use this particular product, because when you're low in zinc, one thing that's going to happen is that your absorption of zinc is going to go down. So people who are deficient in zinc are going to have trouble absorbing it. In other words, when they go to use the zinc, what they're going to notice is that when they take just straight zinc, they're going to get a pretty strong upset stomach from that experience. And that's because zinc actually activates the mineral cofactor enzymes that help you to absorb it. So in other words, the less zinc you have, the less you can absorb. Now that can be reversed, but it takes time. So what you want to do at first, if you try a few drops of this, not a dropper full like they're recommending on the bottle, which is almost 50 milligrams, I would suggest just a few drops at a time in water and swish that around and swallow and see how that does. If even a couple drops makes you nauseous, then another great thing to do, and actually where I would start if people are having flu-like symptoms, any kind of respiratory issue, cold, sore throat, any of that, is actually to take a strong dose of this zinc. So I'd start with a half dropper full, which is going to be about 20 milligrams, put it in an ounce of water, and then gargle and swish that around for a minute and gargle for a long period of time, but then spit it all out. And so very little of that is going to end up in the stomach. This is not going to upset your stomach. But what that is going to do when you're gargling is it's going to absorb through the mucal membranes in the back of the throat. The tonsils are going to get coated, the back of the adenoids into the respiratory areas. And that's going to be a great way to start improving those symptoms right away. So that's what I would suggest for now if you're using a zinc product. And then the other thing to consider, which I wasn't able to get into yesterday, is we need a complete formula. We need something that's really going to help us to activate all of the important enzymes in our body to help with the literally hundreds to thousands of things that are going on in the immune system. So it's common, I guess the word would be, that when we think about health, especially in a sort of a Western model, even nutrition, we like to focus on these single items like vitamin C and vitamin D and zinc, right? And so we tend to over focus on these individual things, which our minds like working like that. It's like, give me one thing, tell me how that works, and then point me in that direction, right? And so that's a very Western way of thinking about that, which isn't bad, but it's not a holistic way of thinking about nutrition. And by that, I mean that you're going to have to think broader, because we need a balance of many, many things. And we're deficient in a lot of stuff, especially in the winter times. And so it's good to learn about really important things like zinc and vitamin C and vitamin D and understand the absorption and how to test and all that. But where people really have to start is by realizing that you need a comprehensive formula that's going to help with giving you everything that's necessary every day. So you need a complete multi-nutrient formula. You also want to make sure that formula helps with hydration of the cells, because dehydration, especially in the wintertime, is a killer for our immune systems. And many people deal with dehydration regularly. And so my formula Cell Energy Complete really focuses on that. The next thing that's very important is having something called a mineral transport molecule. So when we talk about how zinc, is hard, it's hard for it to absorb on its own. And that's why when people take zinc lozenges or straight zinc liquid, they instantly feel very nauseous or can feel sick. And that's because that is the raw mineral in a high dose floating through the system. And that's not really how nature intended us to be exposed to these minerals. We didn't just go outside and start chewing on rocks that are high in calcium and zinc. Our bodies are meant to absorb these naturally through foods and vegetables and animal products and plants. And so one of the things that is important to comprehend, I'm going to go to a quick whiteboard here, is the idea of a mineral transport molecule. Now, there are many types of these, but one in particular that's very, very helpful is, let's see if I can get this right. There we go. One of these that's very, very helpful is known as fulvic acid. All right. And what fulvic acid does, so if we think about, again, minerals, and again, we have an issue with the fact that we have a large molecule that holds on to the mineral ion. So in the case of zinc sulfate, we have this big red blob here is the sulfate, and then we have the small blue circle here, which is the zinc. And so what happens is first we have to ionize that zinc. And that's why purchasing something that is called ionized zinc means that it's already ionized. In other words, this zinc molecule is not attached to this sulfate molecule. They are separated. That's called ionization. And what that does is it allows that free zinc to then absorb. So it's going to absorb quicker, but absorption first starts through the membranes into the cells. Through the membranes of the gut lining into the bloodstream. And then the blood is going to bring these different minerals and cofactors and vitamins to the cell. So now what I'm going to draw here is we're going to use green here for the cell. So let's say this is a nice big happy cell. And cells need minerals and cofactors and vitamins inside, right? So if the zinc, right, which is ionized already and it's floating around, right? So it's been brought to the outside of the cell by the bloodstream, by the capillary movement. Now the question is, how does this zinc get into the cell? Now, like I said, when you're zinc deficient, you have problems with absorbing these minerals. So what you're going to need is patience, because if your zinc levels are low, it's going to be very slow how that zinc absorption process increases. But there's a way to cheat, or really to increase this zinc absorption as well as all healthy minerals and nutrients into the cell. That's through using something called fulvic acid. And so this is a newer system. And so this blue here represents fulvic acid. Now, what is fulvic acid? It is a natural occurring carbon compound that is created in healthy soil. And so then fulvic acid comes from the dirt and it goes into plants, and then we can extract it from plants and we can take more of it. Now, the problem is unhealthy soil creates unhealthy plants, and then we don't have enough fulvic acid in our plant materials or in our animal products anymore. So we're having to it's harder and harder to find healthy deposits of these humic and fulvic acids that we can take that are food grade. And so just keep that in mind when we review the next product. But first we have to understand how this works. So basically fulvic acid comes along if you're taking fulvic acid, if you can find a good source of that. And basically it is a carrier molecule. So it likes taking things like the zinc and connecting to it. And so then it knows, I don't know how it knows, but it knows that these good nutrients and minerals need to come into the cells. And so it travels over here, and the humic and fulvics, or the fulvic molecule, then is allowed, it has a master key, and it is allowed into the cell. And then once in the cell, it will drop off that zinc. And so it delivers the zinc into the cell. Now, as this helps to boost that absorption, because the more zinc we have in the cell is where these enzymes then are activated. And as these enzymes are activated, then your ability to absorb more zinc the natural way goes up faster and faster. And this has to do with all minerals, truly. So that is it for my little chemistry class for the day. I hope I didn't lose anybody there. And now the next question is, so what kind of product can do this? So this is the first and probably the most important product I'm going to share with you that you can find through my actual nutritional store, or not store, but company, Insight Nutrition. And so as a disclosure, this is my company. And we started this several years ago, my wife and I. And so this is a very, very unique product. So let's look at that. So again, if you're in my store section here on alenov.com, you'll see this right here, Insight Nutrition. So if you click on this, this will bring you to Insight Nutrition, or you can go to insightnutrition.com. There's me in my house with bottles and bottles of great Insight products. So these right here, over here, this is Cell Energy Complete. It's in the interesting looking bottle that you squeeze, and the liquid comes up into the measuring container. And here it is on the site. And if you click here, then that's how you can order that. So what I want to do now, however, is we're going to zoom into the back label of this product. So if you look down here, right, here's what the bottle looks like. Here's the back label, and you're not going to see that right now because that is like microfiche. And so I'm going to share where'd it go? Oop, my apologies. I seem to have lost my document I needed open. Give me 1 second here. And we're going to go into my files. We're going to go into here. Many, many files. Update. Here we go. All right. Aha. All right. Sorry about that. Now that we have that up, I'm going to share that screen. There it is. Okay. Thanks for sticking with me. So here we go. Here is Cell Energy Complete. There's the front label. And what I'm looking for here is the back label. All right. So now I can blow this up big enough that we can actually look at it. So this is a liquid multi-nutrient formula. We're just going to highlight some important things here to show you, because if you're looking for something that really has everything you're going to need to slowly improve immune strength, then this is it. And a lot of these improvements were just recently made. So this new improved formula here that you're seeing, what was improved? Well, for one, we doubled the amount of zinc in the product. So hoorah, here we go. Go to there. So here it is. Here we have our zinc. Let's change that color so it'll work better. There we go. So here we have the zinc chelate, 30 milligrams. And so the reason why this 30 milligrams of zinc does not upset anyone's stomach ever is that it's mixed naturally with everything else. And this product is really food grade. So every nutrient, everything in here, every vitamin is coming from natural foods and food extracts, including the natural vitamin C, which we're going to discuss here in a sec. And so that is an important part of this. And so the zinc does not bother your stomach because it's like you're taking it with food. And also there are plenty of, I'm gonna have to figure out how to get out of that. And there we go. There's a very good dose right here. You can see of, zoom in, the product we were just talking about. So here we have the humic and fulvic substances, and there is 325 milligrams of that. Okay, and this is the humic fulvic substances right here. These are, and the fulvic acid, which is in this product, is what we were just discussing. This is the nutrient and mineral carrying molecule, which is so important. If you've never heard of this, I wouldn't be surprised, because this is a very new nutritional idea. It's not something that's been around very long, and so very, very few companies understand it and use it. But it's available. It's something I've used now for many years, several years, and it's absolutely incredible. So the other things to recognize here that we've improved to help with immune support is this immune support complex. And as you're reading through here, we have these proprietary mixtures of natural vitamin C, because whole organic C coming from fruits and vegetables is what you call the vitamin C complex. It's a very large molecule, and this is different than just ascorbic acid. So if you buy a bottle of vitamin C in a store and you look at the label, basically what you're usually buying is ascorbic acid, which is what we tend to call vitamin C. But in nature, ascorbic acid does not exist on its own. And that's why when people take ascorbic acid, oftentimes it upsets their stomach and gives them digestive problems, especially loose stools. So if you're taking a lot of vitamin C and you're wondering why you're getting loose stools or diarrhea, that's because the ascorbic acid is irritating your digestive system. So this complex, immune complex, is getting these extracts of vitamin C naturally from nature, from things like acerola, camu, orange peel, mango, rose hips. And then we pair that with bioflavonoids. And the reason I'm mentioning bioflavonoids is that especially things like quercetin, this has been in the news a lot, this word quercetin, which is a bioflavonoid. And what it does is it is a zinc ionophore. And zinc ionophores are things that help to naturally open up the transport of zinc into the cells. So just like we were discussing in my little class a few minutes ago, there's many ways that you can improve the absorption of minerals like zinc into the cells where they need to do their work. So zinc transport molecules is one way where it actually transports it for you through the cell membrane, like fulvic acid. And then there are things like quercetin, which is a zinc and mineral ionophore, which means it's actually helping the cell to open up the transport through the zinc transport cellular membrane into the cell. And I'll just leave it at that. And then there's a whole bunch of other things in here I don't need to talk about right now. But these extracts and these plant materials are all very, very good for the immune response. So now I'll stop that right there. I don't want to get too much into that, but that's a good way to start improving immune strength. Oh, another thing I'll mention, because our next topic here is vitamin D, is that there is 2,500 IUs, international units of vitamin D in Cell Energy Complete. And vitamin D used to be measured as IUs, international units, and now we've gone to milligrams. The FDA basically told everybody they had to change their units, which is very confusing because it is 50 milligrams to a 1,000 IUs, right? And so in other words, just looking at, yep, oh, I'm sorry, I said milligrams, I meant micrograms. I'm just going to share the screen again really quick here, just so we can be very specific about this. So again, here's a zoomed in back label to Cell Energy Complete. And vitamin D3 is cholecalciferol. So this is the most stable natural form of vitamin D3. And there's 125 micrograms in a serving. And so this is confusing a lot of people because they go, oh, that's way too little. And they think it's too little because they're thinking that they're looking at IUs. They say, I used to take 2,500 IUs, but no, 2,500 IUs of vitamin D3 is 2,500. I'm sorry, confused again. So 2,500 IUs is 125 micrograms. Thank you. All right. So this is what I would call 125 micrograms, a basic daily dosage of vitamin D3 for an adult in the upper Midwest in the wintertime, right? Or really any time in the wintertime. And so when people say, well, how does that compare to how my body makes vitamin D, right? How is that 2,500 IUs going to be too much for me, right? And so this is a little bit complex. So let's talk about this because this is an important topic for people who are considering how much vitamin D to take. And this is why I have to tell every single person that I recommend that they use vitamin D, because most of us should, but I have to say, go get your blood test done. And here's why. There's a lot of confusion about vitamin D and how it actually activates and works in our body. Now, let's go back to the question. Is 2,500 IU too much for me if I'm just, average adult like myself here? And the answer is probably not. Here's why. In the summertime, when we're being exposed in, June, July, middle of summer, high noon, full sunlight, with very little clothing on, so their skin is exposed. Within an hour of that sun exposure, your body in your skin is going to convert cholesterol, that healthy cholesterol in your body, into vitamin D3 in your body. So that's a hormone. D3 is actually a hormone. Your body can create it. How much? It's going to create, based on different reports, between 10,000 and 20,000 IUs. I'm going to use IUs because those are the numbers I grew up with, of D. So think about that. And that's just in 1 hour. And then your body's going to stop making it because it says, oh, that's about enough, 10,000 to 20,000. So most researchers have realized if your body can make 10,000 IU in an hour, and that's what it likes in the summertime, then it's highly unlikely that 2,000 IUs of D taken in a supplement is going to be too much, right? Now, the reason why you can't just accept that as fact for you is because once your body makes vitamin D, there's another issue here. Whether you make it with the sun or whether you're taking it in a supplement, your body now has to convert it into an active form. All right. So the D3, the 25 hydroxy D3 that we can measure in the blood, right? That is going to go up as you take or make vitamin D. And that's why measuring it and doing the blood test to measure it is very important and very accurate. However, once your body has that, it now needs to go through many conversion steps. And those conversion steps occur both in the kidneys and in the liver. Now, the reason why this is a problem for some people is because there's people out there, many people, that have stress and issues and deficiencies and other health issues that are affecting how well their kidneys and liver can work. And then that affects how well you can convert the D. So what does this all mean? What it means is that once I started testing more and more levels with my patients of vitamin D, I found that it was actually surprising to me anyhow, how many average people have problems converting the D. And so how do we know that's a problem? So there's a few ways. One way is that you might take vitamin D, but then it won't even go into the blood. And so you could be taking a high dose of D, but yet your blood levels don't go up. And so that's something you're not going to know unless you measure it. Secondly, and more importantly, doctors, especially in the medical field are always concerned about people taking too much D because they don't want you to get toxic levels. So when you're measuring it in the blood, the target number usually is definitely wants to be over 30, because under 30 is deficient. Healthy ranges usually are in that 50 to 80 range. And most labs and doctors will say you're cool until you get over 100. So once you get it over 100, D3 levels in your blood total, then you might be reaching there's too much, or there's toxicity. Now, I'm going to preface this with the fact that there's been very little research showing that this supposed toxicity leads to any problems. So they can't really demonstrate what toxicity means, because it doesn't seem to be causing much issue. But what I'm focused on with my patients is that if they're taking an average dose of vitamin D, let's say between 2,000 and 5,000 IU a day, what happens is, if you're taking that amount and your blood levels go from, let's say, 25, which is low, to 70, which is ideal, and then it stays in that 70 range, what that tells me is it's coming in, your body's getting it, and then you're converting it. In other words, your body's using it. All right. And again, that conversion process is very complex. I'm not going to draw it out, but it needs both your kidneys and your liver to work correctly. Now, if somebody comes in, they do a vitamin D test, and let's say their first test is 15, like, ooh, they're very low. And then we start them on just an average daily dose of vitamin D. Let's say, again, that 2,000 to 5,000 IU per day. That's a very low, reasonable dose. And then we recheck them in a month. If in a month they're at 80 or 90 or sometimes 100 or 150, what this indicates is the D is coming in and it's floating around in the blood, but it may not be used. You might not be converting it correctly. And so this is the key reason why it's very important that everybody who's using vitamin D supplementation, and that should be everybody, it is important that everybody test their vitamin D levels and twice a year, so that you can see before and afters, right? So there's really no specific time of year you should get tested. You should really just, if it haven't been tested in the last 6 months, you should do it as soon as possible. And then again, if you're A-okay in a great range and you're taking a supplement and you're like, hey, that's got me where I need to be, then you don't need to test for another 6 months. But if you're taking supplements or not, you test, you're low, now you need to talk to a doctor to say, how much D should I take? And then you're going to want to retest in about 4 to 6 weeks to really see and make sure that you have some improvements there. Okay, so that was probably more longer conversation than I thought I'd have about D, but again, it's just so important. Again, what I'm doing here is I'm answering the questions that I'm getting so often in the last couple of weeks. Hey, I'm feeling sick. I've got this virus thing going on. So what should I do? What should I take? And so we discussed zinc. We discussed zinc products, some good ones to use. If you're feeling ill and you live up here in the northern climate like I do, and you don't take vitamin D, then you really do need to start doing that right away. So I don't want to scare people away thinking like, oh, I can't take a vitamin D supplement until I get my blood test. Again, if it's in a reasonable range, like a multivitamin or a multi-nutrient formula in that 1,000 to 2,500 IU range, then that is no problem. It's something that you really want to take right away, because you need that support to your immune system. Most of us need D if we live in the northern climates, and northern climate is anything north of Atlanta, Georgia in the United States, longitude there. So, sorry, latitude. Now, moving on, we've talked about zinc, we've talked about vitamin D. Again, I mentioned vitamin C, which also is very, very important. But again, if you're taking ascorbic acid, you have to be careful how much you're taking. I prefer products that have natural vitamin C in there. And there's a lot of products out there that do, are labeled natural C, and you'll see things like camu and rose hips and acerola cherries. Those are great. Fruits, natural fruits that can bring you that vitamin C in a natural form. All right, so where are we at here with my schedule of things I needed to go through. All right, great. So again, these viral symptoms, here we go, that I wanted to talk about is important because, again, what are we seeing? We're seeing right now this very rapid spread of symptoms in people, adults who normally don't get viral symptoms. And it seems like pretty much everyone's getting it. So my wife was saying, she teaches health classes, and that she's saying that when she does a poll, anywhere between 50 to 80% of the people she sees every day are reporting that in the last 2 to 3 months, they seem to have come down with a viral respiratory sort of thing. But I wanted to discuss why people have a variety of symptoms. And so this is not unusual. If we look at past years and compare viral symptoms, meaning cold viruses and flu-like viruses, if we compare those symptoms to symptoms we're seeing this year with this new respiratory illness that's going around, we'll say, okay, so why is there so much variety in symptoms? Like some people are reporting only a massive headache, right? But no flu or cold symptoms, no body aches, no fever or chills. Other people are reporting, again, a very typical, I got fever and chills and I'm in bed and I have a cough. Maybe I feel some congestion in the sinuses. Other people are saying their only symptom is fatigue, but they're not getting any flu-like symptoms like body aches or chills or a measurable fever, right? If you're testing your temperature, either with your infrared or your in-the-ear thermometer. And this is normal because there's so many different ways that people can respond to colds and flus. And the same thing would go in years past, right? So there's nothing abnormal there. And it's because different people have different weaknesses, different deficiencies, and that's going to play out in different ways. The one thing that's very interesting, of course, this year is this loss of taste and smell, which seems to be occurring in about 2/3 of people who I've talked with who are getting this new virus. And so as we talked about yesterday in yesterday's report, that zinc deficiency it's one of the primary causes of loss of taste and smell. And so it just stands to reason that if a new virus is new, meaning that our immune systems aren't used to fighting it, it's going to be a bigger battle. There's going to be more that's going to have to go on in that immune response in order to kick out and create natural immunity to this respiratory issue. So now, what's that going to do? It's probably going to use up more of our resources. And zinc is talked about because it is one of the most important minerals, not only for hundreds of normal physiologic functions like regenerating cells and healing and creating new cell growth, right? That's a good thing. That's how we continue to be alive and move from year to year. It's because our cells regenerate and we create new ones. So you want to be able to do that. But when you're sick or when your immune system's activated, one thing that happens is you get a message saying, go and create a rapid number of immune cells because they're going to build a new army to go fight. Your body doesn't just have unneeded resources sitting around and a whole bunch of immune cells that are just sitting dormant if there's nothing going on. That's a waste of resources. And so the body waits till you need it to rebuild it. And so this is one of the reasons why certain people have mild symptoms and other people have very strong symptoms. This is why some people, as with any cold and flu from the past many years, why some people might get a respiratory virus for 2 or 3 days and then boom, they're done with it. They're back to healthy, no more problems. Other people get a respiratory virus and now they're really sick for a week and then they kind of get back to work but the chronic symptoms go on for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or even a month. Right? Same thing goes with things like pneumonia, which is very common in the winter. You can get viral pneumonia. You can have that for 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months. And I've seen that complete difference in patients from year to year. Why is it? It's not because one person got one version of the virus, another person got another. No, it's the same virus. The difference is in you, in your strength, in your ability for your immune system to do its job. And one of the most important and necessary things for your immune system to do its job is it needs the raw materials. It needs the amino acids, the proteins, the healthy fats, the active B vitamins, and of course, a whole host of minerals, not just zinc. So, so again, that is why we see such a variety in the symptoms. And one thing I'll say is if you got this and you got over it, no problem, that doesn't mean you're off the hook for this year, right? Because there's a lot of things going around and your immune system is really through this winter going to be taking a hit unlike any other year. So it's important that we're all focusing on simple, healthy, logical, things that we can do to protect ourselves and our family and people of all ages, young kids to older adults, all need to be considering the important basics here. All right, so I believe we're getting down to the end of my list here. I think I'm moving along pretty well. All right, so we're going to put aside the viral thing here from a nutritional perspective. We're going to go back to, again, a quick review of the whole way in which I focus on health, which again is called the Essential Five. And the Essential Five are mind, movement, food, sleep, and nutrition. And so we're really hitting nutrition a lot, of course, because these are my first couple of reports, and I'm just trying to answer all the questions that I've gotten inundated with in the last couple weeks. And then the thing now that I believe is really something we need to focus on, things we need to learn about in this new environment is stress and fear. And now I know what you're thinking. If you saw my report yesterday, you're thinking, hey, no, I'm not afraid of anything. I got this under control. And so when we use the word fear, I'm not necessarily talking about like terrified, huddling in the corner fear. So maybe that's how you're thinking about it. What we're really talking about is fear as the awareness of danger and how our subconscious deals with that. Because fear can create many different feelings and many different emotions. And it's just logical that given these new circumstances, excuse me, take a drink here. Given these new circumstances, that our mind is more aware of fight or flight issues. Our mind is more aware of survival issues because there's a lot of things, new things going on in the world. Like I had mentioned yesterday, I think this month of January 2021 is going to be a particularly stressful month for many people in America and around the world for many different reasons. And so my hope is that we can start this conversation about what it really, really means truly to understand fear on its base level, because it is a thing, it is a vibration, it is a thought pattern that we create in response to danger and survival and to the unknown and to things we can't control. So the number of things that we're perceiving that we can't control in our lives has gone up for most people. And the number of things we're perceiving as potential dangers in this world have gone up considerably in the last year. So what I'm seeing, what other healthcare professionals are seeing, I talk to other healthcare professionals all the time, of course, is that this is really one of the primary issues. And this is why I call it the fear-demic that we're experiencing. And natural health and wellness professionals will tell you, if you talk to any of them, that fear and the different vibrations of fear that we can create in our body is possibly one of the worst things for our immune system. And so I'm going to talk about that and why that is as I explain the anatomy of consciousness again. So let's get back into this. I went through this a little bit yesterday, but now I'm going to present this in a slightly different way. So what we're going to do is go to I'm going to fire up my, pardon me, I'm going to fire up my PowerPoint slide show here. Oh, don't do that. All right, we want to view, oh, there we go. All right, so I fired that up, and now, nope, didn't work. I'm going to, there we go. So here we go. We're going to share that. Thank you very much. From beginning. Okay, good. I think that worked this time. So this is my quick and simple presentation of the anatomy of consciousness. So in the essential five, we talk about the five very, very important categories of things that affect our health. And as I said yesterday, mind is number one on the list. And mind basically is talking about our consciousness, not just our minds or our mindfulness. But what I want to explain here is that this is a finite thing. This is not a theory. This is not a just a strange woo-woo way of thinking about our the way that we exist. This is a very, very real part of our humanity, which is our consciousness. And of course, if you'll take a gander around at books and YouTube videos out there, there are literally hundreds of thousands of people that are talking about this today. And especially right now, I believe that is because consciousness is on everyone's mind, especially our emotions and our fears. And we're hearing terms like the awakening that is occurring. And one way to awaken our consciousness, ironically, is to be loaded with a overabundance of fear. And I'll explain why that is in a second. So the anatomy of consciousness is this. This is how I tend to draw it out. I start with an upside down triangle, and on the bottom, there's three voices of our lower consciousness, the first of which is the ego. The second is our mind. And so now the mind in this sense means our frontal cortex, right? And so our mind that helps us to think and compute, the part that we take great pride in as humans, that we have this ability to think. And then the third is our heart. And this is not the organ heart that's in our chest, pounding and pumping blood through our body. This is our heart consciousness. So we have our mind consciousness, our heart consciousness, and then our ego consciousness. And I refer to these as the three voices of consciousness, which then makes up the anatomy of our consciousness. And so to understand this better, we really need to get into what the ego is and what the ego does and represents to us. So the ego, there's a lot of different ways in which people use that term. And so I want to be very specific in explaining this. So the ego is basically the inherent programming that comes with our physical bodies. All right. So I'm going to get into a bit of some spiritual religious terms here because this has to be done. And so I'm of course, I'm a Christian. That is my religion. I was born a Christian, raised a Christian. So I understand Christian terms. So in certain Christian terms, you would say that we have a soul that comes down into this body, this physical body, as we are born into this world. And so the ego is the part of our consciousness that is hardwired into our bodies. So if you have a body, you have an ego. And what it's there for, to start with, is to see, there we go, is to help us survive. And so everything about the ego really turns into survival. And this is why understanding the ego is very important in understanding fear, because fear is nothing more than a survival program within the ego. Now, when you draw out the ego, in order to understand its parts, you always do this. You can draw a box or a rectangle. So you have a larger box and rectangle here. And then we need to, I'm going to see if I can both spotlight, annotate, and go through at the same time. I cannot. Okay, sorry about that. So let's try that again. So basically, we have the survival brain, Okay, so we have this lower box and then this box, and then the upper box is larger and it's cut in half this way. Now, so we have the survival brain on the bottom, and our survival brain is the deepest part of the ego. So you could say this is sort of like the brain stem, or the part of us when you think about that you have this fight or flight response that comes from. That's our survival brain. We all have that. It's the part of us that just hard encodes messages of survival. So, when you're very little, you're born into this world, you know absolutely nothing. You could walk up to a giant grizzly bear and be like, oh, the bear looks so friendly and fuzzy. And you don't know the bear might eat you. So your parents then have to teach you, this is a bear, you need to run away. And so we learn through responses of people around us in our survival brain when we should be, when we might be in danger and what that response could be. And then the next part of the ego is the child mind, and that's something we're going to talk about. And then the upper part here is called the self. Okay, so in a timeline sense of how this occurs, all right, this is hard encoded into our bodies, and of course different parts of our ego are created during our first 25 years of life. So the first part of the ego, the survival brain, you're born with, because your first 5 years of life are all about learning how things work in the world, what's dangerous, what's good, what's bad. And so from age 0 to 5, you have pretty much just a survival brain. Now, what's interesting is usually from age 0 to 5, if you're not afraid of much, you're actually acting in heart consciousness. This is why we love young children, is because they are born full out into heart consciousness. It is very, very active because they don't know what else to do. So they're just operating in this very spiritually high vibration. And as long as you're not always in fear or in survival mode, they stay in heart consciousness and very little is going on in the ego. But so ages 0 to 5 are in the survival brain. And then after age 5, we go into a new mode where we start to see ourselves as individuals. So that's called, we then have what's called a child mind. And that's just an extension of the survival brain. And the child mind develops then from age 5 to around age 12. And 12 is kind of that key age. But of course, with all these ages, it can vary quite a bit. So the high ceiling of the child mind could be anywhere from 10 to as late as 14, because after that time occurs, so what occurs on that age 12 mark is that we start to develop the self. And so this is the self here is responsible for those teenage years, early adolescence, when parents go, what on earth happened to my child? Well, your child got older. Obviously, the activation of puberty and the hormones within the body activates all sorts of things, not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally, and that activates the self. And so there's the reason why the self is chopped into two blocks here, side by side, is that it has two sides. And so to the left here is, if we go too far to this side of the self, this is the selfless side of the ego mind. And then on the right is the selfish side of the ego mind. And at first, some people are going to see this as, oh, we've got the good side on the selfless and the bad side on the selfish side, when in fact, they're neither. So they neither side is good or bad. But this is how the self creates what are called polarities within the ego. And it's very important we understand these over time, because these polarities tend to create most of the strife and problems in our self. So I'm going to annotate quickly here with a spotlight laser thingy. There it is. Awesome. And so what you're going to see now is that, again, 0 to 5 years of age, we're in survival brain, but it doesn't really have to do much if life's good. And so we're just rocking along in heart consciousness. Then around age 5, on average, we start the child mind. And again, If we're feeling great and there's not a lot of fear and life's amazing because we live in a great village, you're going to hear me use the word village a lot because, excuse me, human beings were meant to live in villages. We were not meant to live alone. We're not designed to live in these tiny little family units with one mother and one father. That's just not the way. If you look at history, if you look at the way humanity has coexisted for a long, long time, we are running an interesting experiment right now where we have broken up the village into these tiny little individual pieces. But I'll talk more about that later on. But again, if you live in a great village, so we can still have villages, right? We can have our larger family structure, friend structures, school, people around us. This is why people tend to gravitate towards small towns when they want to live a balanced life, is because a small town represents a healthy village. So if you live in a healthy village from age 5 to around 12, your child mind's a-okay. And you might be mostly in heart consciousness most of the time. Now, that doesn't mean that certain emergencies might not evolve. So if there's an emergency, if there's an actual danger to your life, then instantly, boom, you're going to run back down here to survival mode. And so what that's going to do is it's going to potentially save your life, which is not a bad thing. Because if you're chilling here around age 12 and then an emergency occurs, you don't have to think about that emergency or what you need to do. You'll instantly go into survival mode, and then everything that was encoded in you about how to deal with emergencies is going to instantly activate, and that is going to potentially save your life or save other people. So again, all of this can occur. We can go into survival mode without a lot of fear. Fear is actually an illusion and an illusional feeling created in response to danger. So you'll hear me say this many times, that danger is real, but fear is an illusion. However, it is, by illusion, I don't mean to say it doesn't exist. I'm saying that it is just a energetic construct which creates emotions within us. And these are not emotions that we should be trying to cultivate. These are things we need to use our heart consciousness to find a way further from, or to get away from it more and more, as much as we can. So let's see, we're going to go now to, there we go. So let's talk a little bit more about this ego construct and what this means. And then I'll put an end to this class because it's getting a bit lengthy for today, but I think it's, again, an important thought to go through. So what we have here, again, is the survival brain, and what it says to us, okay, this is the point of the ego. It says your physical body is all that you are, and death is the end of you, right? Now, many of us don't believe that, but that is what the survival brain says. Its only job is to keep your body alive. So it sends you messages that your death is the end of you, and it is possibly one of the worst things that could happen to you. And so that is a way in which we create fears. Now, the child mind says, I am the center of the universe. Okay, that's what the child mind says. And that's true, right? And that's why when you have children, you realize from age birth to about 12, 13, they are the center of the universe. And then, of course, they enter the self, which is a very complex part of the ego. And the self creates these complex webs of emotions that bounce back and forth between selfless and selfish. And so the lower vibrational emotions actually tend to activate the selfless side of us. So at the very lowest end, we have shame, guilt, apathy, and grief. And then from there comes up to fear. Fear is a vibrational emotion that's right about in the center of the range of negative emotions. And so I usually draw it in the center here. And then the selfish side activates anger and desire and pride. And so, and some people might say, like, oh, isn't pride a great thing, taking pride in your work? And so, used in that context, I understand why people might ask that question. But in reality, when you're talking about pride or pridefulness in the sense of consciousness, it is in fact a negative vibration. And so what we have here, all of the negative vibrational levels of consciousness within the self. And we'll talk more about this as time goes on. And why do we need to know about all this? Like, why am I spending all this time on this? Um, it's really because this right here, like I had mentioned yesterday, is what has come to me over the last 10 months or so, since this new world health crisis has occurred. And it is something that I find this understanding of myself, of my consciousness, is what has allowed me to lift myself out of much of that fear which has occurred. And that does not in any way imply that that I have gotten over all of my fears. All right, I have not. I still, on a daily basis, am wrestling with those. But I find, interestingly, that the moments in time when I'm communicating with patients, whether that be in person or on telehealth calls, or on Zoom calls, looking at people through this wonderful little camera, or in fact, talking to you live through this YouTube feed, these are the moments in which I know I am in heart consciousness, because I can feel that everything in me relaxes. So that is in fact one way to enter heart consciousness, which is what we want, because heart consciousness, as that opens, it lessens and dissolves the fear within our ego. But again, understanding the ego is a complex thing. So we're going to talk about that more as time goes on in little snippets over these daily health reports. Um, and so, yeah, doing this helps me. So in truth, partly I am doing this because it's helpful to me. And but I'm really getting a message personally that it's one of the things I should be doing right now to help those of you out there who are suffering from fear and anxiety and stress, which, like I said, pretty much everyone is. And I hope we can learn about this together. So this will evolve in many different ways, I believe, as time goes by. These daily health reports, as we get more involvement, we may even do live communication shows, inviting people in, maybe 10, 20 at a time in Zoom calls so that we can discuss things. So I have a number of ideas, but for right now, I hope that you got something from these last two reports, that you can share these with people you know who might be having questions about nutrition, or confused about what they can do. And there are things you can do if you're feeling sick or if you're afraid of being sick. Remember, we need to reduce fear, because fear in the mind is one of the most detrimental things to our immune system. And that's not just some crazy thought that I just thought up last night. There has been decades of research, hard objective research done, proving that when people are afraid or in a fear mode, in a negative emotional mode, that you can measure a incredible drop in your cellular immune response, your ability for your immune cells to do their job. You don't have to eat poorly. You don't have to consume sugar. You don't have to be nutrient deficient. The only thing is to be fearful, and that one thing alone can lower your immune response. So I hope I've not overstated the fact that that dealing with our fears and learning consciousness is going to help us dramatically over the next several months and in the year 2021. So to end this off, as promised, since I had no actual time, I have no idea how long this has gone, but I'll just say that we're going to end this off as promised with a guided stress release therapy, which is something I do myself. It's something I do with my patients and clients in person. And there is a way that you can do this right now that is very helpful. So this is the very beginning process of stress release therapy, which is using eye movement in order to calm. First it activates our emotional brain centers, and then it can help to release emotional stress from the nervous system. So here's how this is done, and it's very, very simple. You push back this hair so you can see my eyes here, and sun setting, but I got a artificial light on me here. So here's how this is done. I'll explain it, and then we can walk through this step by step. My dog's lonely again. That's her howling in the background. Be there in a second, Sadie. So here's how this is done. It's quite simple. And what you want to do is relax, take a few deep breaths, and relax your shoulders and relax your eyes. And if you're busy, if you've been staring at a screen for a long time, you may want to just either gently rub the muscles around your eyes or just close your eyes for a couple minutes, right, in order to help relieve some of that stress in the eyes. Because what we're going to do is we're going to use eye movement in order to help bring up and activate and release stressful emotions. And this has been proven neurologically to be very useful. So here's what I mean by that. You're going to look straight ahead at a finger or at your hand, right? And then what you're going to do is you're going to bring that hand or finger up. I'm going to try to stay on screen here. So I'm going to back up, and you're going to rotate it like a clock. So as you do this, if you can see my eyes, I'm following my finger starting at 12, right? And then going around clockwise. And I follow my finger very, very slowly, right? And so you don't want to do it fast. You want to do this very slowly. And if this is the first time you've ever done this eye exercise, this clock rotation, a few things might pop out at you that you'll notice. First of all, you might notice that it hurts, or you get a sharp achiness or even a sharp pang, maybe in all directions, which is a sign that your eyes have been focused into the center, and they haven't been used properly, using the peripheral motion of your eyes. So your muscles around your eyes that move your eyes can become very weak. So if this hurts going around in all directions, then what you want to do is make the circle smaller. Okay. Because if the circle's smaller, then obviously your eyes do not have to pull, the muscles do not have to pull your eyes as hard. Okay. So find a circle size that is just right for you. Okay. Where you can feel that kind of exercising effect, that the eyes have to pull a bit, but not anything too painful. If you can go all the way out to the peripheral areas, and go ahead and do that. Okay. And so as we're doing this, we're going to go around 3 to 4 times and then change direction. And now we'll go counterclockwise. And so now we're going counterclockwise around. Now, as you're doing this, if this doesn't bother you in all positions, you may notice that, and this is why we do this 3 or 4 times each direction, you may notice that there is a certain position or a certain clock, a certain time on that clock where you get a sudden pang or ache or a stressed feeling in your eye. And it could be just one eye or both eyes, and it'll be very specific. And so if I come around here, like right now, I'm noticing today that when I get up to 2 o'clock, I can feel that. It's almost like suddenly the muscles in my eyes feel very strained when I hit 2 o'clock. And then as soon as I get over to 12, it disappears. Okay. So, and I noticed in both directions. So if I'm going clockwise again, starts right around 1, 2 o'clock, it's the strongest. And then by 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock, it's gone. What does that mean? What that means is that there is either a weakness in that muscle, or more specifically, there can actually be a neuroemotional tension that occurs in the nervous system, and then it plays itself out in our eye muscles. And again, I'm not going to get into the neuroscience behind that, because that would take about 2 to 3 hours, which I doubt most of you would stick around for. But once we do this, that's all you need to do. So in the very simplest form of eye exercise for stress release, you simply want to relax, focus on your breath. So in other words, don't over focus on your eye movement so much that you hold your breath. You want to simply rotate around 3, 4, 5 times clockwise and 3, 4, 5 times counterclockwise, and just pay attention to that feeling of achiness and just breathe. Okay, make sure you can time it with the movement if you'd like. A lot of people say, I'm going to breathe in during half of the clock, and I'm going to breathe out during the other half. So that kind of goes with the speed of the movement. Breathe in and breathe out. Okay. And so that's a nice pace. All right. And believe it or not, if all you've ever done is deep breath exercises where you're just sitting, your eyes are closed, you're staring at in one location, that's very helpful for stress relief and to help center our thoughts and to feel our emotions. But if you're breathing in and out in with the motion of the eyes, clockwise and counterclockwise, that is even more powerful. You're going to notice even more stress release and feelings of stress leaving your body. So I think we'll stop right there. We have many days coming where we can go through more and more and more types of stress release that are very helpful. I don't want to, of course, spend all the time doing it on one single day. I hope that this second report was very helpful for you. And I hope that you are able to share this through links, through different sites with people who you think it might be helpful for. And please do subscribe. Click on my Facebook page, link up there where I'm going to be posting these. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can get notifications when my next report comes live on the air or when it's been recorded, and so you can watch that again later. And I thank you for being with me today. I hope you have a very good rest of your day.